way it goes. Just the way it goes. Degrees.
Sadistic Penguin Studios presents Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
And Justin Svo Svoboda.
What, so I gotta sit here and eat dessert alone like I'm fucking Steven Glansberg?
It's almost time, so grab a drink. Get your popcorn ready and get comfortable to hear two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Welcome, everyone, to a live edition of Yumper and Svo. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia, and I'm with my other co-host, Justin Svo Svoboda. How you doing, Mr. Svoboda?
Yump, I am good. I am happy to be back with you. I did not realize when I did this last week all the work that you put into this, man, and I appreciate you. I just wanted to tell you that live on air so everybody can see that.
It's all good. You did a fantastic job. I'm kind of glad we didn't do last week because I had a horrible ear infection to the point where I couldn't finish your pod till later. But it was a good show, man. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a big sneakerhead, but there was a lot really good chemistry between Maloney and your buddy, who's a basketball coach.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fun episode, but I'm glad to be back doing this with you. That's why we do it.
Yes, sir. So let's just go right into it, my man. Let's go into what we were watching this week. So you want to talk about what you watched this week?
Yeah, so on Saturday night, I got out of work early and I dipped over to the movie theater right at the mall, and I went to go see the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. We've done our Star Wars episode, and let me tell you this: that the restoration of the 40th anniversary it's beautiful. Whatever they did in studios to make this look up to date, it's fantastic, and I loved it. Obviously, it's one of the upper echelon, top tier Star Wars movies. We've all seen it a million times before, but seeing it on the big screen gives you like the warm and fuzzies all over again. It was really, really fun. And then on Monday, I went to the movies with my wife. We hadn't gone by ourselves in a while. We went to go see Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a book or a movie about growing up as a girl, but it's based on a classic kids book by Judy Blume. And Judy Blume wrote Fudge, Super Fudge, Freckle Juice, just brilliant pieces of literature. And it's a really good watch. It's a really good watch that I think people should check out. I enjoyed the heck out of it. My wife loved it. My wife cried at it, but my wife cried at Blended with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. So she cries at everything. I highly recommend this movie if you want to see, one of your childhood books come to life. What about you, Yump? What did you watch?
But first, just to talk about Return of the Jedi. So when we had Chirizi on, that's the movie that got me into Star Wars. I remember watching it on a late night Channel 7 when they used to rerun the episodes. This is before the special effects edition came out. And it got me hooked. And then I bought the special effects edition and went back and watched all the original movies. So Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, and then Empire comes second because it's the first one that got me into it. So I really want to go see it in theater. I just don't know if I have time right now. Do you know if they're going to stay out for a while or not? Or
I mean, it's supposed to be out for another week, I thought.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into it to see it before, especially this week since the Sox are they're not in town until the 12th.
They're on the road.
Yeah, so I can go. But definitely gonna check that out. And as far as Are You There, God, Miss What's Me, Margaret? I haven't read the book, so is it like a romantic comedy?
It's not a romantic comedy. It's kind of a coming of age movie about, a 13-year-old girl that's like going through it, whatever. But she wrote a bunch of other really popular books that were like they sold millions and millions of copy. One of them was like Fudge and Super Fudge. She's like I think she's an Alcott. I can't remember if it's Alcott, but she won awards for these books. Like
Mm.
um they're beloved and they've sold millions and millions of copies. And it took a while for this movie to get made, and they finally made it, and they did a really good job.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of like a Rumblefish, like one of
It's
those kind of
very,
books.
it's. I think that's a good analogy. The
Mm.
other analogy is I don't know if you remember a movie with like Christina Ricci called Now and Then that came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's very very much in the same vein of Now and Then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have to check it out. Then I probably take Jen to go see it.
I think Jen would love it.
Um, but for me, I actually watched these two movies in the same day. Which was I finally got to see Ant-Man Wasp Quantumania. I actually enjoyed it. I don't think it's probably the best of the series, and I'm kind of a little superhero fatigued, as they say, but it wasn't bad. I see that they're trying to really go into this multiverse, and with the new Flash coming out, which I'm super pumped up. I know you are for,
Yeah,
because Keaton is back. Uh, but and Ben Affleck, but of course,
and Affleck. Yeah,
but they're kind of exploring this multiverse thing, and it's just getting kind of drawn out really, really bad in
It-
terms of Marvel.
to me, I don't know how you feel about this, but this multiverse thing is almost like when you were a little kid and you were reading a book and they ended it with, and then they all woke up, right? It
Yes.
was all a dream, right? That's what the multiverse feels like to me. It feels like a cop out. Now, like I thought Quantumania was not as bad as people made it out to be. I was entertained. I know Jonathan Majors is not the most loved guy right now. He's going through
Mm.
some drama in his personal life, but the dude can act. And I know it doesn't excuse anything that he did, and I'm not, but like he played a really good role in this movie, and he's like a really good actor. I thought he was a bright spot in this movie. I did notice, and I do agree with some of the criticism about the special effects. It is widely known that Disney pulled their FX teams off of Quantumania to rush out Wakanda Forever. They wanted to get that done faster, and I think the special effects suffered in this a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something I did notice when I was watching it. I'm like, it looked kind of a little for something that was just came out. It looked a little outdated, but I love Paul Rudd. I always love Paul Rudd and everything he does.
Yeah,
So anything with Paul Rudd in it, I'll watch. Like, but Jonathan Majors is a good actor. Yeah, what he's going through, I don't agree with his actions, but just taking that aspect out of it, he is a great actor. I've seen movies with him. The Harder They Fall was a Netflix movie that I highly recommend if you haven't seen that one. It's awesome. It's a western, but it's like produced by Jay-Z, so I think you would like it. Um, yeah, I just want to see where they go from here because they gave spoiler alert, they gave at the end post credits a nod to Loki,
yeah.
and I'm assuming he's going to be a big part of it because he was in the previous season. So if there's these rumors about him being replaced, what are they going to do with them? I mean,
I
who they
mean,
gonna how they gonna just rewrite Loki?
Kang can be anybody though, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like Jonathan Majors.
But I'm just saying that I think they shot the season already, so that they're gonna have to reshoot all his scenes, which is gonna be
Yeah,
a
I
pain.
mean Disney hasn't made any public statements about like letting him go. Like they're kind of just ignoring it and hoping it goes away. So I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna do it. Is Loki something that you like? I didn't watch the first season. Is it something you recommend?
Yes, I'm a big fan of the guy who plays Loki. I can forget his name. I can't think of his
Tom
head.
Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah,
Well, I liked him in the Marvel movies, but just him as an actor himself,
yeah.
uh, he's really good. And it has Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson gives his Owen Wilson vibes. But
Wow.
it's like, yeah, but he's actually hilarious in the movie. It's a very it's not the movie, but the series. It's actually a very well written series, and it kind of transitions from the Avengers to Loki, and it gives like good explanations of things. So it's not like, oh, this just happens because it's the Marvel world, like universe. It gives you actually like good transition into why this happened, and it's really interesting. And Tom Hiddleston's awesome. You also meet a bunch of other characters in there, different Lokis. it was a for me. I waited until it was done before I got into it, which
And you binged it.
and I binged it and I loved it. I
I
liked
might
everything about it.
I might have to go back and watch it. I got to be honest with you. The
Mhm.
only Marvel like TV show that I've watched in its entirety because it kept my interest for the whole thing was WandaVision.
Yeah, and I really like WandaVision.
Yeah, WandaVision was really good. WandaVision felt like a movie to me where when I started watching Captain America or Winter Soldier and Falcon, I was just kind of like, eh. So maybe I'll go back and give Loki a whirl.
Yeah, so if I had to do the rankings, it would be WandaVision 1, Loki 2,
Okay.
and then Captain America and this with Falcon were is 3. But actually I put She-Hulk above Captain America and the Falcon. I know
See,
people
that's
don't like
another
that.
one. That's another one that I didn't finish, but I heard, and I don't know how much
Mhm.
you want to give away, but does Matt Murdock or Daredevil show up in
Yeah, he's
She-Hulk?
in there.
Then I got to go back and watch it
Yeah,
because
watch it. It got a lot of criticism from the mega fans, which I don't understand, but because they said it was not being taken seriously. But if you ever read a She-Hulk comic, everything's in the fourth wall. She's like a
yeah.
version of Daredevil, like a different version of Deadpool. Everything's like
Okay.
fourth wall. So,
Okay.
and it was that there was some funny parts in it. You know, Bruce Banner's in there. From I could know you could tell from the credits, but I would definitely recommend checking that out. But check out Loki first. I think Loki is probably the second best one they've produced so far.
I'll give Loki a whirl. And then before you go to the what you watched, what was the
Mm.
name of the Western movie that you watched with Jonathan Majors?
The Harder They Fall, and that was
Harder
actually
They
a
Fall.
recommendation from Southside Zoe. He actually told me about it, and I went and watched it. It's on Netflix.
Cool.
Yeah,
I have
it's
like a
awesome.
list. I have a list that I'm compiling because like I sometimes I get in a rut like with what I'm gonna watch. And like I go to the movies a lot to see stuff, but like at home sometimes I just like I fall into this rut and I just watch the same thing over and over again. Like I'll put on a Sopranos rerun that I've seen 100 times, and I gotta force myself. Like I force myself to go back and rewatch the movies for tonight's episode, but
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I really get interested in like clips. So if I'm on TikTok and I see a clip from a show, like what I'm really starting to get diving into, I don't know if you ever watched it, is Suits. Like Suits is like something I'm getting into. That show's been gone for 4 years now.
I
Uh
should I should look into Suits. The TikTok clips that always get me is Yellowstone.
yeah, that's another thing I was thinking about getting into, but Suits is like 11 8 seasons, so I think I'm gonna they'll do that first
That's a lot of seasons.
and transition to Yellowstone.
Okay.
Like but the second movie I watched was actually with you and my lovely wife and the sugar baggie. Tony came out with us. So it was a sadistic penguin party, and we went to go see Evil Dead Rise. Now, for most of you guys that listen to the pod, know I am a huge fan of Sam Raimi, huge fan of the Evil Dead. Bruce Campbell, I would love him to narrate my life if he could. It would be awesome. But this movie was complete bullshit. There's no way of me sugarcoat it. I went home and I thought about. I mean, I told you how I felt after I saw it, but I
Yeah.
went home and I, gave it a day or so and just thought about. And this movie basically is a horrible horror movie with Evil Dead tidbits thrown in. The best part about this movie was Alyssa Sutherland, who plays the mom. One, she's hot, and two,
I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat
yeah,
it.
and two, she was really creepy. That aspect was cool. They threw some homages to the original Evil Dead. I can't believe Sam and Bruce were executive producers on this. I know it was written by uh, Lee Cronin, who wrote Hole in the Ground and Ghost Train, which was like a really big independent mini film, but it did not fire on all cylinders. If I take it what it is, it's like a B level horror movie. It reminds me of like Demons back. If you remember Demons from like the '90s, like a ripoff of Night of the Living Dead. That's what it reminds me of.
I re-
And
I
mhm,
I remember it, and like reflecting on it a little bit. I think if you take away the Evil Dead title and you don't expect it to be an Evil Dead movie because there's no Bruce Campbell in it, like it's okay. It's a good Saturday night watch when you have nothing else to do, but it's not an Evil Dead movie. It doesn't feel like an Evil Dead movie. Now, I know that we disagree fundamentally on like Scream 6. We just had our episode a couple weeks ago. And Scream 6, um, they took Ghostface out of California and they moved them into New York City. And I think this movie suffers the same fate as Scream 6, except I liked Scream 6, where they're in a high rise condo in like downtown Los Angeles. Like, I don't think they
mhm.
ever really say where they're at. but my guess is it was somewhere in California.
Yeah, and this is a reboot, so it's not at the cabin.
And I get it, and I get it, but like it started off, and I don't know who's gonna see it and who's not gonna see it, but it started off at a cabin in the woods, right? Like the opening scene in the
Mhm.
cabin in the woods was pretty cool with the drone, and they incorporated some new stuff.
Mhm.
And the first 10 minutes, well, I shouldn't say that because the
Mhm.
first 10 minutes of Halloween ends, I was like, oh shit, this is awesome, and then the rest of the movie happened. Um, I remember texting you that Thursday night that I went to go see Halloween Ends. I text the group. I was like, dude, you guys got to see this. This opening sequence is sick. And then the rest of the movie happened, and I was like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah, I wish I could look at those texts again because they're pretty funny. Because you're like, "Yeah, this is awesome." Then, like, an hour or so later, you're like, "This movie is bullshit." So I wasn't that angry. Alright, this movie is nowhere near as bad as Holiday Ends, but I think just me being like, if you're gonna throw the Evil Dead on there, you have to incorporate comedy in some way into the movie.
You do.
And this movie's trying to go a little bit more serious. Like, even the previous film had a little bit more comedy in it, which is fine. Okay, if you wanna go serious, fine. But there were, like, the story in general, there was no, like, progression to it. Like, there was no it was just there for, like, the main character's story and her situation, I think was just to get her to her sister's house, and that was basically it.
That's it, right? And they just like they threw in like this drama, like,
Mhm.
my husband left me, and it's just me. Well, why didn't you call me? Well, I don't know. Like it was a lot. If it would have been, it felt a lot like I don't know if you remember watching the remake of When a Stranger Calls that came out in like the early 2000s,
Mhm.
like just a B horror movie that like is okay to entertain you for an hour and a half on a Saturday night, but that's about it. Like I wouldn't see I'll never watch this again. I won't buy it. I mean, I take that back. I buy every movie, but like if I have any Evil Dead in my library, like I have to have the collection. But like I'll probably never watch this movie again.
Yeah, and this movie made a lot of money, so they're probably gonna make another one. I just was like, they should stop.
Yeah, it just crossed the $100 million mark this weekend, which means they're definitely going to make another one.
Yeah, it was just a movie that I didn't like. My brother saw it, and he didn't like it. He's not as big of a Deadhead as I am, but he told me it was bad. I
Yeah.
just did not enjoy it, and it's because I do have that bias that but you called it Evil Dead, so I'm like, you have to make it somewhat
You
enjoyable.
somewhat, right? Like and even the remake that came out in what, 2014?
I think it was 13, but yeah.
Yeah, but like I just remember how they used lens filters on that movie and the whole movie was red. Like the whole movie was just red. Like it rained red blood and well, I mean blood is red, but like
Mhm.
it was raining red.
And
Um
yeah, and I noticed that, like, the past 2 movies have been trying to get a lot more graphic in terms of kills, which is fine, but it was just I don't know.
I guess
I like the humor thrown in there, and I
I
know
like
Bruce is not in there, but Bruce is in the remake.
I
He's just
know.
not he's in the end, but he's in this one too. He plays a part of a priest, on the recording they listen to, but
I don't hate the gore, but I'm not into torture porn.
no.
Like like I thought the spoiler alert, the cheese grater scene in this movie was cool,
Mhm.
but like I don't know, I didn't love it. I didn't like yeah, I'll never see it again. I'll never it's just forgettable.
So, if you guys are gonna watch this, if you're listening to this, or watching us right now, if you're gonna watch this movie, there's a part in this movie where the protagonist and hero are in a scene where they leave somebody out to dry to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So, I wanna if you see that part, let me know what you guys think about it because I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And even my brother was like, "What is this?" Like, it's a part where it makes no sense. It wasn't that great. I wouldn't recommend it, but if like you said, if you were into, like, horror movies, you wanna see, like, a Saturday night movie, be my guest to watch it.
I mean, it was a good Saturday night at the movies, man. We got there, we saw the previews, like we had a good time. It just the movie itself was forgettable. It was forgettable, and I'll probably never watch it again.
Same. I probably won't either.
But if they make a sequel to it, I'll see it because maybe it'll be better.
Yeah. Ah, man. I wish they would make something with, Dana Renzo and, the guy who plays Pablo. Uh, if you ever seen, Ash versus the Evil Dead?
Yeah.
they could continue the story with them. And
That was a Star
right,
series, right?
yeah, Ray Santiago. If they ever made like something with just them progressioning and like maybe Bruce just retiring, just fine. You could have something with them doing something because like they left on a cliffhanger.
I mean, and
But
Bruce is old. He said himself that he can't do these movies anymore.
yeah, and he's not coming back for a TV series. They've been trying to get him
No.
back for a while, but I don't know. But you know how Hollywood is; they'll keep shelling it out until they make money.
Yeah, if it makes money, they're going to keep doing it. Like, Blumhouse doesn't own the rights to it anymore, but there's going to be another Halloween movie.
Yes, and God help me.
At this point, it's like watching the White Sox. I'm going to see it just because I have to now.
Oh my God.
Except, do we have a final? Did the Sox win?
I
I know this is a movie
have it.
podcast, but our audience, the Sox got the W in Cincinnati. So shout out to everybody in Cincinnati that would normally be tuned in with us. That's at the game. So I'm glad you guys
Willed
got a
them to
W.
victory.
Yeah, you guys willed them to victory. You got a W. Anyways,
Um,
I like how diverse our like what we watched this week is. Like, we got a Marvel movie, we got a horror movie, we got like an OG Star Wars movie, and then we have a coming of age movie about a girl getting her period. Like,
God. Oh my God, we are diverse, but let's talk to the meat and potatoes of everything, Swole. So we are really huge fans of, we were really huge fans of the superhero genre in terms of movies. Um, I grew up watching, of course, I was introduced to Ninja Turtles, of course, He-Man. But every Saturday morning when I was in 8 or 9, I would watch the Fox series of X-Men. So I would sit there with breakfast and I would watch every morning the time it came out. So that's how I got really into X-Men, was watching the cartoon series. And I was so happy when they put it back on Netflix, and they have it on Disney Plus now. Which I got my son watching it too. It was something I was really into. So what got you into X-Men as a kid as well?
so honestly, I didn't get into X-Men until that animated show. I was never like a cartoon or like a comic book X-Men kid. I was a Batman kid. But the animated show it's the second greatest animated comic book show to ever exist. It's perfect. The theme song is perfect. The episodes were great. The way that they wrote the Sentinels, I loved that animated show. The only other animated show that's better is the Kevin Conroy Batman.
Yes, I agree. Batman.
And I know I'm biased, but the animated Batman the animated series was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I totally agree. It's probably the greatest cartoon, like any superhero series I've ever seen, because
Yeah,
of just Kevin Conroy. The writing was excellent, and also you had Mark Hamill as Joker.
absolutely. But the X-Men one is a very, very close second. It's really good. It's really fun to watch. And it kind of, I would say that there was a lull in and superhero movies for a long time after Batman and Robin. Right? Batman and Robin came out and the Batman franchise went away. It went away. And then we were waiting and waiting and waiting because the rights to the X-Men were up in limbo and the Spider-Man rights were up in limbo, and all that legal stuff got carried like settled out of court, and they finally made a Marvel X-Men movie, and it kind of kicked off this whole superhero craze again.
Yep.
Like, I would say the X-Men are responsible for, I know it's technically not the MCU, but they're responsible for comic book movies in this day and age.
Yeah, I would say they kind of jump started it. Do you want to just get into it?
Let's do it. I put in here the next slide. I put in like a timeline of the X-Men movies because it can get kind of confusing. So if you're watching with us now or you tune in later on the YouTube, you can kind of see the way that this is the way that the timeline's supposed to be, because a lot of it's prequels and a lot of it's stuff that took place in the past. But we're going to go strictly 6 movies today.
Yeah, so we are going to touch a little bit on the last X-Men Rise of Dark Phoenix a little bit. We're not going to have a slide or sound for it, but we will touch on it a little bit as the final one. But we want to go 6 like straight movies that we've seen and gone through. So we're going to go with the 3 original X-Men, and then we're going to go into the Bryan Singer first 3 and a little bit of Dark Phoenix at the end. So you'll have kind of 7 movies, but really just 6. And then eventually we'll probably later down the pods, we don't want to keep bundling everything because the X-Men series is very, very, big. We do want to hold off on the Logan uh, Hugh Jackman Logan series to later because I think that would be a nice little pod to have in the future.
Yeah.
Also, Roxy loves Hugh Jackman, so I'm pretty sure she would love to be on that.
Roxy does love Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, but let's get into our first movies, Phil.
Let's do it.
You're in my school for the gifted, for mutants. You'll be safe here from Magneto.
What's a Magneto?
A very powerful mutant who believes that a war is brewing between mutants and the rest of humanity. I've been following his activities for some time. The man who attacked you is an associate of his called Sabretooth.
Sabretooth? Storm. What do they call you? Wheels?
2000's X-Men, directed by Bryan Singer, who also directed Bohemian Rhapsody, X-Men Apocalypse, Days of the Future Past, X-Men United, Art Pupil, and The Usual Suspects. Starring Patrick Stewart, Sir Ian McKellen, Hugh Jackman, Famke Janssen, Halle Berry, James Marsden, and Anna Paquin. This movie had a budget of $75 million and a box office of $296 million. So, Swell, tell me about X-Men.
So X-Men is a movie that I saw the year it came out. Actually, the theater that we saw it in was the theater that you and I rented out for Top Gun Maverick at AMC Streets of Woodfield. And I remember just being absolutely infatuated with this movie. Now, I have gone back and rewatched these six movies this week. And I think X-Men is even more important now, politically or whatever, than it's ever been before, right? The movie opens up with Eric, or Magneto, in Nazi Germany. He's a young Jewish boy, and he's at a concentration camp, and he's being separated from his mother, and he separates these beams of steel with this magnet, like the magnet powers that he doesn't know he has yet. And I think that the parallels between this movie and things that are going on today, I'm not going to comment politically on them or give my opinion, but I think it's important that we know that these things are still happening. I think this movie is way more socially relevant than people give it credit for. It's not just a comic book movie. Bryan Singer, he did a really good job of bringing this team of X-Men to the big screen for the first time, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. The audio clips, once again, if you don't know this, I don't know the audio clips that we're going to hear until Yumper plays them. It's a surprise, but the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. There's also a scene later on in the movie. Yump, do you remember the scene where they're in the jet when he looks at the costume? He's like, "What? You wanted black, or you wanted blue and yellow spandex?"
Yeah.
And it just doesn't take itself too seriously. I like this movie. I think it holds up very, very well. Bryan Singer is a really good director. He's a terrible person,
Yep.
but he's a good director. And you said Apt Pupil, right? And
Mhm.
Apt Pupil is a movie that he did with Ian McKellen and Brad Renfro, I think, is in.
Yes. Yes.
And it's about this kid that discovers a Nazi living in his neighborhood, and he makes him wear his old uniforms, and it's creepy and it's disturbing, and it's really, really good movie. But
It's actually a book by Stephen King.
It's a Stephen King book. Yes. I didn't want to trivialize the fact that it's a Stephen King book, but the movie is really, really good. And
Yes.
but this X-Men movie holds up really, really well. Now, I can't say that about future installments, but this one holds up really, really well. What do you think? I ranted about this movie. You tell me your feelings about this movie, Yump.
So I really enjoyed this movie. I think this movie still holds up in terms of just presenting characters, giving a backstory, which wasn't close to the comics. This is the only original story throughout the movies of the X-Men series that we're gonna go through. Everything else is based off a comic or a graphic novel. I thought Singer did a good job doing that. I thought he cast perfectly. I was discussing this with Comic Punk guy, who's probably gonna listen to this later, but he threw out something that really got me thinking. He said that the Singer X-Men is more of a science fiction movie than it is like a superhero movie. And me thinking about it kind of is. And Singer, I was reading as I did my research, Singer was actually trying to portray that more in this type of atmosphere in terms of X-Men. I love the fact you touched on, this is more prominent in with the world we live in now. X-Men was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby as a metaphor for the civil rights movement, but it's basically boils down to you're different and people don't like you because you're different, but there's good people who accepting, and we need to accept people who are different and the trials and tribulations they go through. Which, without getting all political, kind of goes into what we're going through today. It still holds that message, and I thought they did a really good job of casting people. Hugh Jackman took on this role a as a, as Logan Wolverine, just basically, strapped a rocket to him, even though he was in other movies, but this basically was his big coming out day, and he was actually recommended this role by, Russell Crowe, who turned it down because he did Gladiator, and he thought that Logan and, the Gladiator character were too close in comparison, which I makes no sense because one was a fucking Roman soldier and the other one was a mutant. But
I think,
uh,
yeah.
yeah. But one crazy thing I found about this, well, when I was reading about this, so they actually had planned to make this movie in 1984. It was planned by Gary Conway and Roy Thomas, who wrote the screenplay for it with Orion Pictures. Now, anybody who grew up in the 80s and 90s knows what Orion Pictures are.
RoboCop.
Yes, RoboCop. This is probably their biggest movie. But it fell through when Orion went out of business. And then throughout 89 and 90, Stan Lee was trying to get in discussions with a company called Corolco Pictures for an X-Men movie, with James Cameron actually as the producer and Kathleen Bigelow as a director, which I thought would have been crazy. But Bigelow, who wrote the story, wanted Bob Hoskins as Wolverine and Angela Bassett as Storm, which Angela Bassett would have been great, but Bob
Bob
Hoskins.
Hoskins, Super
I love
Mario.
Yes, I love Bob Hoskins, but there's no way in hell I could see him as Wolverine.
I think the other rumor that I love, and I don't know how true it is, but it's an urban legend that for years they wanted Glenn Danzig from the Misfits to play Wolverine.
Yes, that's another great point. So he was invited by 20th Century Fox, 20th Century Fox to audition for the role of Wolverine in '95 at the height of the Misfits, and he basically was like, "Yeah, I can't do it because of scheduling conflicts." So they kind of were like, "Okay, well, Jim Caviezel was actually approached to be Cyclops, but backed out due to scheduling. A person who really wanted to be in this movie but was denied was Michael Jackson. Can you guess what part Michael Jackson wanted to play?
I'm gonna go. Like, is this character in this movie, or was he just
It's
in the
in this
X-Men
movie.
franchise?
It's in this movie.
He wanted to play Cyclops.
No, he wanted to play Professor X.
Oh my god!
One cool thing I found about doing this is that Ian McKellen was actually offered Lord of the Rings role of Gandalf during this, and he turned it down because he couldn't do the filming because of scheduling. And Brian Singer heard about it and actually told him, "No, we'll rearrange the scheduling so you can go out and film in New Zealand." So without that being rearranged, we probably wouldn't have had Ian McKellen in probably his second most iconic role.
I mean, I
as
didn't know that,
Gandalf.
but thank God, because
Mhm.
I was thinking about those movies, and that's a whole other episode that we can do down the line. But
Mhm.
thank God those Lord of the Rings movies got made because they're brilliant.
Yeah, they are. And there's a couple other people who were considered for Wolverine besides Russell Crowe. Um, Mel Gibson, Aaron Eckhart, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Viggo Mortensen, which is kind of funny because he was in Lord of the Rings. Edward Norton,
I mean, he
Keanu Reeves.
probably could have made Wolverine work. Edward Norton, I
Yes,
buy that.
but he would never be in the sequels because he's weird
No,
like that.
that he's such a strange bird.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves and Gary Sinise, which
Well, so I think like Gary Sinise has become like a character of himself. Like he is a serious actor and he can act.
oh, definitely.
But like after Lieutenant Dan came out and like he did a bunch of like CSI TV shows and stuff, like he kind of became like, I don't know, this goofy version of himself. But like I probably could have seen it back in the day. It would have been one of those weird, awkward '90s movies. Like when you see the pictures of Nicolas Cage as Superman in the testing
Mhm.
photos, it would have been one of those weird, bizarre ones. Like or
Yeah.
like Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher.
Oh god, I remember so as a kid we used to go to Wisconsin Dells. One of my close family friends has a they have several trailers on a campground, and his grandmother, who we call Mamacita, she watches all old like horror movies like Iron Monkey. She would love Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher. That's like one of her favorite movies. So whenever we were little, like I'm pretty sure she still watches it to today because she's still with us. But like you could go into her their trailer and she'd be watching it. And, like so we know she's watching Dolph. I think she just loved the way Dolph looked, but that was one of her favorite movies.
I mean, I get it. Like we all like terrible movies, so you can't judge someone. But like the casting in the '90s, it wouldn't have been the same. This movie was a game changer, man. Like I said, I don't think superhero movies exist in the form or fashion that they do if it wasn't for this one.
Yeah, and then just for the role of Magneto, Terrence Stamp was considered, David Hamblin, Sir Christopher Lee, Count Dooku,
Count Dooku, yeah.
Dracula was considered, which I thought they would have done pretty well, but I thought Ian McKellen did a great job. Uh, this is the only movie where Wolverine doesn't kill anybody, which is pretty crazy. And
and
like, no, go ahead.
I love that this movie, it had Wolverine, it had Cyclops, it had Storm, it had Jean Grey, but Anna Paquin as Rogue was the main character in this movie.
Yes,
like, and I thought that was a really good like way to go about it.
And they incorporated a lot of Jubilee's characteristics into her. For those who watch the animated series, know that Wolverine and Jubilee
That
were
yellow
very,
jacket.
yeah, she's in like a cameo with some actress having her, but Jubilee and Wolverine were always so close, and they kind of made that into Rogue and Wolverine. I thought they did a pretty good job. Also, before we go to the next one, Ray Park's in this movie in his first speaking role as Toad.
That's Toad, yeah.
So a lot of there's some Star Wars connections in this one too.
Like Ray Park really got to show off like how nimble he is in this role. Like I know he did as Darth Maul, but he didn't talk at all. He had like 3 lines. But like as Toad, it was cool. Like I had no idea who Ray Park was until these movies existed.
Yeah, and before I wanted to mention this before we went to the next one. There's actually a Halloween Rob Zombie reference in this movie. You know why?
No.
Sabretooth actor and this
Oh,
movie.
Tyler Mane. Tyler Mane played Michael Myers. Yeah. Absolutely.
He was in this movie.
And he was a wrestler in WCW for a while, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
We need Brian to tell us that because he's the wrestling Wikipedia.
Yeah, my wrestling gets fuzzy after a certain time. But yeah, yeah, I guess he was a wrestler, or he was actually a WWE wrestler. But yeah, he's in this movie. But I just thought it was funny because Halloween. But it all comes full circle, I guess. But let's go into our next one. Let's go to our next one.
They say you can imitate anybody, even their voice. Even their voice. Then why not stay in disguise all the time? You know? Look like everyone else.
Because we shouldn't have to.
X2, X-Men United, released in 2003, again directed by Bryan Singer, starring Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Hugh Jackman, Famke Janssen, Halle Berry, James Marsden, newcomer Alan Cumming, and Anna Paquin. This movie had a box office of $407 million on a $110 million budget. So this is their highest movie to date in terms of the timeline. So let me start by saying this movie is not as good as the original, but it's not that far off from being bad. It's actually really enjoyable if you take it for what it is. This movie is again based off a X-Men comic. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's based off graphic novel, God Loves, Man Kills, which is based by Chris Claremont's graphic novel, The X-Men. So it's got some line in there of following the timeline of the X-Men comics, but it was enjoyable to me. I love the fact that they team up. You get a little backstory of Wolverine. You you see a little bit more of Mystique, and I always thought that Wolverine's my favorite character in terms of watching the cartoon, but I always thought Mystique was pretty cool for what they had Rebecca Romijn dress as. I love the transition of when she goes when she transforms, which I thought was really cool. And the crazy thing is, when I was reading this, she actually had a party where she was drinking tequila with the cast, and there's a scene where her and Hugh Jackman are fighting, and she got wasted, not knowing that they're going to film that scene, and she actually threw up blue Hugh Jackman, which is kind of funny. But just the crazy thing is like the transitioning of using different techniques for costumes in this movie. Halle Berry had to have those white contacts in their previous movie, the same thing with Rebecca Romaine, and they, like, were horrible for them because they were so irritant. Now they're just using CGI, so it's kinda like the advancement of technology in terms of the way the movie's made. I thought the story was good. I loved the like I said, they touched on certain aspects to keep you wanting more. What'd you think about this movie, Swole?
So I like this movie. I think this movie was an enjoyable watch. I have a couple beefs with this movie though,
Mhm.
and I don't think they're like honestly like. Let's remember that when this movie came out in 2003, I was 22 years old, and I was excited because there were new comic book movies coming out, and a lot of these things have never been seen. I was disappointed that they didn't introduce enough new X-Men into the film franchise. Alan Cumming is great. I love Alan Cumming. I love his version of Nightcrawler. I think that was really, really well done. I think the CGI of Alan Cumming and his being able to, uh, what do they call it? Morph or transmit wherever he's from.
Teleport?
Teleport. I thought that was really, really cool. I loved his skin markings or his tattoos, and that he was Catholic, right? That was a whole different thing,
Yeah, there
right?
for his sins, yeah.
Yeah. But they reduced Colossus to basically a cameo, and I wanted more. I also wish, and I know it's based on a comic book that where the source material came from. Um, my favorite X-Men character of all time is Gambit. Like Gambit in the animated series was brilliant and I loved him. And when the rumors were flying around, I was like, "Oh, we're gonna get Gambit! I can't wait! I can't wait!" And all we got was Nightcrawler. And I don't. It's a good movie. I loved how they team up against Stryker. They have to defeat Stryker and like his crew. Um, it's a good movie. It's nowhere near as good of a movie as the original.
No, nowhere is near, but, I mean, it does have its good points, and
It
yeah,
does. It does. It absolutely does.
one crazy thing I was reading about, actually a couple, was this is the only appearance of Nightcrawler in this series,
Yeah.
because Alan Cummings hated having to go through the makeup treatment, and he was miserable. Um, so he left after this, and it was just explained, I guess, in the X-Men video game that he couldn't do violence anymore, which is I think is fucking stupid, but that was one thing that was crazy. Taylor Mayne and Ray Park were actually supposed to reprise their roles as Sabretooth and Toad, but there wasn't enough story for them, so they were cut, which I thought was kinda weird. Uh, Another thing I thought was crazy that I read was that the scenes and, like, whenever they show the, Xavier School for Gifted Children, it's actually recycled footage because they didn't have the budget to shoot it again, and this movie had a $110 million budget, so what the fuck were they spending their money on?
That's yeah. What is going on there? What's funny, like so the school
Mhm,
that they filmed like the exterior shots at is actually in Toronto,
mhm.
and it was the first place that we visited when Kelly and I went up to see the White Sox play the Blue Jays. Um, you can't do a tour, but you could go like on the outside to see it. And it's really cool. It's really cool. And I was like, Kelly told me that this was in the X-Men movies. I'm like, that's awesome. That's awesome. There's not a real basketball court that comes up. The plane doesn't actually come up from on the ground though. In case you're wondering, that was CGI.
I was hoping it did. But, there was actually a, funny story to this is when they're filming the flashback of Logan running naked, and when they were filming that scene, Hugh Jackman, of course, dehydrated himself, and he's running naked, and he said that when he turned the corner after the shot, James Marsden, who plays, Cyclops, his mom was there with a bunch of women, and they were holding dollar bills for him,
Oh my
which
god,
so so he thought that was pretty hilarious. Uh, Halle Berry dropped out of Geely to make this movie, so I think she made a great
that's a
decision.
great move for her career.
And, like, tidbits of you talked about Gambit being in this movie. Gambit was rumored. Nick Fury was actually supposed to be in this movie, but they couldn't play nice with Marvel because if you didn't know, Marvel didn't own the rights of X-Men. They were sold by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. 20th Century Fox bought them.
Yeah,
So they tried to get Nick Fury to come in here and they couldn't do it. Also the Sentinels, who are not on this poster, but they're on previous posters, were supposed to be in this movie, but were cut for no reason. It's got a lot of little things like that, but I still found it really enjoyable in terms of, it's an action movie, it's a Marvel movie.
Yeah, I think it's a really good entry into the franchise.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as the original, but nothing really is. There's
No,
very rare you're gonna have a Terminator 2, that's better than the original or, as good as the original, but it was good enough to watch to where I really enjoyed it.
I agree.
Mm. So let's move on to our next one, my friend.
Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
X-Men: The Last Stand, released in 2006, directed by Brett Ratner, who directed the Rush Hour franchise, the Red Dragon remake, and Money Talks, which is another one of my favorite movies, starring Patrick Stewart, Kelsey Grammer, Sir Ian McKellen, Hugh Jackman, Famke Jensen, Halle Berry, Elliot Page, Sean Ashmore, and Aaron Stanford. This movie had a budget of $210 million and a box office of $460 million. Swole, tell me about Last Stand.
So, we talked about Bryan Singer and how terrible of a person he is. He's done some really bad things, like personally, but the worst thing that he did was leave this franchise to go direct that piece of shit Superman Returns. Because this movie sucked ass and Superman Returns sucked ass. This is not a good movie. The best part of this movie is that they introduced Kelsey Grammer as Beast, who I thought played him really, really well. Vinnie Jones is outlandish and over the top as Juggernaut, but otherwise, this movie was awful. That's basically how I sum up this movie.
Yeah, it's definitely not of the 3, this is definitely the weakest, of the original 3. Kelsey Grammer was actually so pumped for this role, he actually auditioned for it. It was something he hadn't done in 20 years, which I thought was pretty crazy. This at the time, this was the most expensive movie ever made with a $210 budget. Bryan Singer was supposed to direct, but he, decided he wasn't. He was really into, Superman, so he said that he didn't really see a 3rd movie being made. Uh, Famke Jensen came out and said that this movie, the way they were supposed to do the Dark Phoenix saga to her was done horribly. She was really excited about it, and she didn't think it was done very well, which I thought is kinda true. Um, Again, like, Colossus is supposed to play a bigger role in this movie, and they whittled down his part. Uh, you know, Matthew Vaughn was actually supposed to direct this movie, which kind of portrays like back when the original X-Men was coming out, they actually offered the director role to Robert Rodriguez and he turned it down. Also Paul W.S. Anderson, and he turned it down. And Bryan Singer took it over. Well, Matthew Vaughn was supposed to do this one and couldn't, like he said, with the pressure that the studio was putting on him, he couldn't do it.
He made his own superhero movie and it was better. I don't want to say better, but I thought Kick-Ass was better than most of these movies in this franchise.
Yeah, Kick-Ass was a very good movie. I do like the aspect they had in terms of the weapon cure, but I think there was just too much going on. They need to stick to one story, and they should
And I
just
think
stick with the Jean Grey Dark Phoenix story instead of the cure.
I think the X-Men suffer from kind of similar to some of the same things that like Spider-Man 3 suffered from, where you just introduce too many characters to give them the screen time that they need to develop, right? Like, you know,
Mhm.
like
No,
like
that
I'm trying to like Sandman and like Rhino and Spider-Man 3, like they just didn't have enough. It just wasn't there. And
Venom.
that, yeah, Topher Grace. By the way, if you ever get a chance to watch that TikTok of when Spider-Man is in the black spider suit and he jumps off, he's like, "See you later," and he jumps down, and then the fart noise happens. It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
My favorite one is when he just the Bully Maguire that came from the third one of put some dirt in your eye. Yeah.
Was that Joe Manganiello?
Yeah. But crazy thing about this is, for this movie, Brett Ratner took over the reins of it, and Bryan Singer and Halle Berry did not have a good relationship. They still don't. Halle Berry didn't wanna do this, but when she saw that Bryan Singer was gone, she actually came back to reprise her role as, Storm, and she actually asked, "Can Storm fly in this movie?" Which I thought was pretty funny.
I mean,
Uh The best part about this movie is Hugh Jackman. His role, the more he evolves as the character of Wolverine, like the complete asshole-ish and just the stuff he does cracks me up. His one-liners are great. Him and Kelsey Grammer kind of, made this movie tolerable. Again, Gambit was supposed to be in this movie. They really wanted to have a love story with Wolverine and Storm, which is something that is in the anime series and comic books, but like I said, there was just too much going on in this movie to really have it be a really, really good one. Is it
Also,
watchable? Yeah.
Arlie Ermy is in this movie.
Yes. I totally forgot he's in this movie, which is funny. Um, and this was supposed to be like the cap of X-Men, but
Yeah.
Brett Ratner left it open with the pawn piece moving at the end. And the character of Rogue is completely like watered down. She has, it's more focused on Shadowcat and Iceman than it is anything. Uh, her character is, and they watered that character down a lot. And going forward, they watered down even more, which I found was really weird.
What's weird is like Anna Paquin's career arc, right? And I know
Yeah.
these conversations are all it's supposed to be about the X-Men movies, but we always go off on these tangents, right? Like her career arc was like she's done a lot of stuff. She was a child actress, and then she was in these X-Men movies, but then like after this, she went away for a while, and then she came back as Sookie Stackhouse in True Blood, right? And I think True Blood, for me, is a top 3 HBO show of all time, right? I think True Blood, the first 4 seasons are absolutely brilliant. She was fantastic in it. I'm surprised that True Blood didn't get some sort of reboot during the COVID pandemic when they were remaking a bunch of stuff for nostalgia purposes, because I would have watched that. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but Anna Paquin is brilliant in it.
So True Blood, I have watched some of the episodes. I haven't gotten into it. My wife actually likes that show a lot. I haven't really watched it. I don't know if it's top 4 because Sopranos, The Wire,
It's hard.
Boardwalk Empire, and even Oz, where I consider that before.
It's for me. It's The Sopranos, Entourage, The Wire.
Yeah, Entourage. That's like it's not even in top 5 for me.
Yeah, like Entourage is like top. Entourage might be number 1 of all time, depending on what day of the week it is and what I'm watching. If I'm watching Entourage or am I watching The Sopranos? And The Wire can be in that conversation too. It's just really good. HBO just makes good shows.
Yes. But yeah, her career arc is completely out of whack.
See, somebody agrees with me. Tony B.
Yeah, but he didn't say it. The Entourage was better than Sopranos, which
No, he didn't. He didn't, and I didn't say it was better. So don't go clipping that quote and putting it out there and throwing me under the bus. I just said that I enjoy it.
But in terms of this movie was not anywhere near the other two. Kind of like the trajectory kind of went down, and I understand why they decided to do and there's a lot of like timeline issues in this movie, which they thought they would fix in the next movies we're going to talk about, but they kind of fucked those up too. But let's move on to our next one, my friend.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher.
Charles Xavier.
Go fuck yourself.
X-Men First Class, released in 2011, directed by Matthew Vaughn, making his debut. He also directed Kick-Ass, as we said. This story was actually by Bryan Singer, starring James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Rose Byrne, Jennifer Lawrence, January Jones, Oliver Platt, and the great Kevin Bacon. This movie had a budget of $160 million and made a box office of $352 million. So, tell me about X-Men First Class.
So, I think this is a good entry into the franchise, if I'm being honest with you. I love that they went back to, and like spoiler alert, like the next 3 movies we talk about take place in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And I love that they did that with this. And this takes place in the 60s during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the rise of mutants during that time and them like coming out. I absolutely love James McAvoy as Professor Xavier. And Michael Fassbender is always a creep. He was a perfect choice as Magneto. I enjoyed this movie. I like the route that they went with this movie. It's just a shame what happened in the following movies, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I really like the casting in this movie. James McAvoy, I thought is excellent as Charles Xavier. He plays a different version of Charles Xavier. Patrick Stewart was excellent in his casting, but James McAvoy is more of a has a little bit more comedic element to it, a little bit more of an asshole-ish element to it, which I thought was great. Michael Fassbender is probably throughout all these movies, including the ones with Hugh Jackman, is probably the best character actor in the X-Men series, in my
Agreed.
opinion. I think
Agreed.
he is excellent. The way he plays Magneto, this movie um, draws on heartstrings a little bit, and I love the fact that since Singer wrote this, he played off the first movie of having that concentration camp where Magneto was, and what happened to him there. They expand. This is originally supposed to be a Magneto origin story, but that fell through, so they wanted to expand upon it, so they add in the X-Men in there. Now, there are certain things that I didn't like about this movie, like Riptide. Riptide's never mentioned in terms of name. He's in the movie,
Right.
but he's never mentioned in name. Um, the whole thing with Charles and Raven, aka Mystique, was weird because in the previous movies he doesn't even know who the hell she is. Like, there's no like or callbacks to it. I thought was kind of weird, but and then of course having Beast in here as Hank as basically Charles's like helper or whatnot, that was kind of crazy. It's just it to me, it's just little things like that kind of threw me off a little bit. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice intro. I thought it was way better than X-Men 3, The Last Stand.
Yeah.
I thought he did a very good job of writing it, and I thought they did a good job of bringing the story to life for this one. Crazy thing is, Taylor Lautner was actually recommended for the role of Hank McCoy, but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts, and Nicholas Hoyt was later cast. Lucas Till, who plays Havoc in this movie, was cast as Beast, but then decided that he didn't want the makeup and decided to play Havoc. And the last crazy thing about this is instead of James McAvoy, they were considering Edward Furlong to play Charles Xavier.
Interesting. Have you seen Edward Furlong lately?
Yes, he looks horrible.
It's not. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, I love the way that they played it, like with Magneto's like childhood traumas in this. But I just love my favorite part of this is how they tied this movie into what was going on in the world in the 1960s.
Yeah, that was a nice little tie-in. One more thing before we move on to the next one. So when James McAvoy was cast as Charles Xavier, he was super excited. He went and shaved his head, and then they told him, "Hey, Charles Xavier's gonna have hair." So he had to wear hair extensions while his hair grew out, which I thought was funny. And eventually, as we go forward, he does get his head shaved, but it just makes me laugh that he was so excited that happened.
James McAvoy is another like really good actor. Like
Very, very good.
He did those M. Night Shyamalan movies,
Split,
and then like he was in the sequel too, right?
Yeah.
What was the sequel called?
It's I can't remember it. Tony, if you have any comments,
they were really good.
Yes,
I enjoyed them.
It was off Unbreakable.
It was It was They the end of it went into Unbreakable. He was looking
Glass.
for Mr. Glass. That's what it is. Yeah. I think I don't
He's
know.
in Wanted.
What do you think, Yump? You think that maybe we could do a M. Night Shyamalan episode at some point?
Oh, dude, you'll hear me fucking we could do it. You hear me unleash on a movie. You'll hear me unleash on a movie for M. Night Shyamalan. Yeah.
Is it The Happening or is it what is it? Which one is it?
A Village.
The Village.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. The Happening was pretty stupid too, but I won't unleash on it.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
When I saw who was in the movie, he's like, "What happened?" Yeah, well, like this movie's not going to be good. But that movie also came out after The Village. So
yes.
I kind of was expecting that.
The hype for The Village was real, and then I was pissed when it really happened.
So extremely. I remember watching that.
Yeah.
I'll save that for when we
Well, yeah. That's a good episode. That's a good we'll put that on our list.
Yes. But going back to this movie, I love the fact Kevin Bacon plays Sebastian Shaw. He played a villain great.
He really did.
And I thought Fassbender, like, I just can't stop talking about how Fassbender played Magneto. Like, he's this person who's out for vengeance, but you kind of feel bad for what happened to him and why he's doing it. So you kind of like, and just the part where he hunts down all the people who wronged him were like some of my favorite parts of the movie because it's like showing that Magneto's a badass.
Yeah. Have you ever looked at Fassbender's like filmography?
Yeah, he was in Inglourious Bastards before.
He was in Inglourious Bastards. He's been in so much weird shit. He did this movie called Shame, and I don't know if you've ever read about Shame, but this movie is probably the most fucked up movie that I've ever seen. Like, and I'm including like Requiem for a Dream. I'm including like it is the most disturbing movie that I've ever seen. Like, if you get a chance, look up the Wikipedia or the article about Shame,
I'm looking at
and
it right now.
it is bizarre.
Apparently, he's a sex addict in the movie.
He's a sex addict in the movie.
Oh
It's
my
a
god.
sex addict in the movie, and it is so strange.
Tony knows what we're talking about. That's a movie right there. Yeah, but Fassbender, like, I love him and all he does. Like, he's one of the actors that I would like. If he's in the movie, I'll watch it just because of him.
Yeah,
He's one of those few ones that I'll, besides the regular ones I love, which
Mark
is
Wahlberg.
Kurt Russell. But but yeah, I thought the cast was really, really done well in here. Jennifer Lawrence, I thought was okay as Raven. It was a nice little story. So I think they're off on the right foot in this, rendition of X-Men.
Yeah.
So let's go into their next one.
So you were always an asshole. I take it we're best buddies in the future.
I spent a lot of years trying to bring you down, bub.
How's that work out for you?
You're like me. You're a survivor. Want to pick all that shit up?
X-Men Days of Future Past, released in 2014, directed by Bryan Singer. The story was actually written by Matthew Vaughn, Jane Goldman, and Simon Kinberg. This movie starred Sir Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman, Elliot Page, Peter Dinklage, Shawn Ashmore, Halle Berry, James McAvoy, Jennifer Lawrence, Michael Fassbender, and Nicholas Hoult. This movie had a budget of $200 million and a box office of $746 million. So I know you said the movies kind of go downhill a little bit. To me, this is my favorite movie of all the X-Men movies. I thought the storyline was great in terms of what they were doing. Now, the things this movie fucks up, I don't like in terms of how they go forward from it. But I do like the way they had, it's the thing that made me really love this movie is the fact that it brought me back to the cartoon, the animated series, because of Sentinels.
The Sentinels. And what's fucked up, and stop me when I'm wrong here, but the Sentinels come and they destroy society in the year 2023.
Yes, which is fair. But I was like, when I saw it, I was like, I laughed because I'm like, oh shit. But the crazy thing too that really got me like all giddy was that Bishop is in this movie, and if you haven't seen the cartoon series, Bishop is a big role in there with Cable, and Cable was literally in Deadpool.
And
but
Cable is the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, right?
I believe so. I can't remember his backstory. But I gotta look it up. But if anybody knows, let me know. Yeah, I wish Count Punk Guy was in here. He would know.
He would know, yeah. But I'm almost positive. Like, I wish my cousin Mark was on here too, because he's the one that introduced me.
No, he's the son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor.
Okay.
She's a clone of Jean Grey. So I guess Jean Grey, yeah.
She is, yeah.
But I love the storyline in this movie. And actually doing research into this one,
So Scott Summers is Cyclops. So yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alan, the girl we just talked about, Anna Paquin.
Yeah.
Had a more predominant role in this movie. Now, I've seen like little small clips of her as Rogue in this movie, but there's actually a Rogue cut where Iceman dies when they go to rescue her, and she actually takes the place of him, of Kitty, because after Kitty gets cut by Wolverine, he sees a Stryker. He slashes her.
Yeah.
She actually takes the spot her place to keep him back in time, and the timelines get changed. But they cut that out, which I thought was weird. The thing I do love is that they brought back some of the characters from the originals in terms of Kelsey Grammer as little cameos, Famke Jensen's in here as little cameos, James Marsden as a cameo. They, brought that back to bring it back to the original a little bit. And I thought, seeing Magneto and Professor X work together was really cool. And Peter Dinklage is also awesome. And Fassbender, again, doesn't disappoint. This is why this is one of my favorite ones. Well, my favorite movie of the franchise.
I don't disagree with you. And I do think that the Sentinels, and talking about them, and it reminding you of the animated series is like a brilliant comparison. Um, I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. Um, I think maybe the hard part for me is I know what is coming next with Apocalypse.
Yes. So also, we're not going to talk about Wolverine and Logan as much.
Yeah, we will
But-
eventually, but
but-
not on this episode.
There is a part in this movie that even I asked Comic Punk Guy about because he's Comic Punk Guy.
He knows his shit.
Why the fuck does Wolverine have his claws if Mystique saved him from having his claws? Because if you remember in the movie, she's dressed up as Stryker, which he disguises him.
Right, she disguises herself as Stryker.
And they pull him out of the water to let him go. He didn't get adamantium in him yet. And then he wakes up in the school and everybody's alive and Charles knows who he is, so he tells him about what happened, which makes it seem like they changed the past to happen in the future. So it's all one continuous timeline. Now, this is where Fox's whole beginning of making these movies was to make sure the timeline was fixed, the continuity issues. They just fucked it all up. Like, I love this movie, but this movie fucks up more of the timeline to me.
It does. Like, it makes everything more confusing.
And when we go into the next movie, I'll even talk about it more because it just, I don't know, man. I don't know what the fuck they're doing, to be honest with you. Like,
well, but I think like this movie showed you how important the X-Men are in the Marvel universe and how Disney needs to figure their shit out and start incorporating some of these characters into the MCU. Like they have to at some point start incorporating these characters. And I know they will, but hurry the fuck up.
Yes. But let's get into our next one since I already mentioned it.
Everything they've built will fall, and from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
X-Men Apocalypse, released in 2016, directed by Bryan Singer, starring James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, Oscar Isaac, Nicholas Hoult, Sophie Turner, Rose Byrne, Olivia Munn, and Lewis Till. This movie had a budget of $178 million and made $543 million at the box office, which was a real big surprise to me when I read that.
We're gonna blame that on inflation.
So, Swell, tell me about this movie.
So, like, you know, the TikToks where it's like, it's all right, it's all right, and then they have The Rock. That is the biggest piece of dog shit I've ever seen. That's what this movie is. Like, it's bad, and it's hard because Oscar Isaac or what's he better known as? Poe Dameron, right? Like, that dude can act. He's been in some great movies like Ex Machina. And like I liked him. Like, he was one of my favorite parts of the Star Wars like last
Moon Knight,
trilogy.
he was in Dune.
He was in Moon Knight. Like, but this movie's pretty ass. I like Rose Byrne. I like Oscar Isaac. I you know, that's one that we haven't touched on at all. But Jennifer Lawrence's performance as Mystique. Raven Mystique, like she can act too. I like Jennifer Lawrence like as an actress, but this movie was not good. It wasn't fun. It wasn't entertaining. I just watched it again for the first time since I saw it in the theaters, and it's cheeks, bro. This is a cheeks movie.
Yeah, so love the cast. Movie's a shit movie.
It's fucking ass cheeks.
One thing is this reboots again. Wolverine has his claws somehow in this movie. This is what I'm trying to talk. There's a scene where, spoiler alert, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it, it's 7 years old. There's a scene where they see Wolverine kill people. Bryan Singer's actually one of the people he kills, which is kind of funny. But he goes and kills people as Weapon X. So they didn't stop him getting his adamantium claws, which made no sense to me. So now they're trying to do a Back to the Future thing where there's two different timelines, which again is stupid. You know,
It's so stupid. It's the multiverse thing all over again, but it's also the scene in fucking Austin Powers where he's trying to explain, like he goes, "Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed." Like,
Yes. I think the best part of this movie, besides Fassbender, is actually Evan Peters, who plays Quicksilver.
Quicksilver.
I thought he did a good role. I think it was his coming out party, and I do like the fact that when Disney actually ended up buying 20th Century Fox, they had him in WandaVision as her brother,
Yes.
the fake brother, which I thought was hilarious. But that's probably like as good as it gets. I love Oscar Isaac. From what I read about, he had a very hard time doing this role of Apocalypse. Apocalypse also looks like shit,
He
to be honest.
does.
He just looks nothing like he does in the cartoon. But there was a lot of rubber used in it to the point where when Isaac would talk, the rubber would be picked up on the microphones. So he had to basically dub all his voice, all his lines in the movie. Um, he doesn't say he hates it. He just says that he appreciates everybody who worked on it, which is, the class act, but it wasn't a good movie. I think it's a big cash grab by Singer for this one.
I still kind
Uh,
of forget that Sophie Turner's in this, and she's also, she's a Stark.
yeah,
Like, there's another HBO show that we didn't even talk about in the top 5.
Game of Thrones. I never
Game
watched
of
Game of
Thrones.
Thrones.
Oh, you should. You of all people, I think you would like it.
No, I tried watching it. I can't get into the dragon thing.
It's such a small part of the show, though.
Yeah, but it's just like I like Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings really isn't something that I will continuously watch. Like I've never seen the Hobbit movies, which people tell me to watch, but it's not my thing.
People tell you to watch the Hobbit movies?
Yeah.
Because that's wrong.
Well, it's Peter Jackson. Like people told me to watch, like they're not that bad. I'm like, I just couldn't get into them. The Lord of the Rings I watched, I thought they were great, but it's just not like it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. Like I'm starting to read about it and get into it a little bit in terms of like learning the stuff, but it's just when it comes to the Hobbit, universe and stuff like that, it's just
I
too much
know.
there.
And the D&D stuff, like you and I had conversations on about like getting a game going and trying it because I've never played it.
Mhm.
I'm like, dude, this is even too fucking nerdy for me. Like,
I've joined people that like my buddies showing me how to do, which is cool. It's just, but you gotta think on your feet in terms of things. But
and you
just
have
the
to
hop.
invest a lot of time into it.
Yes, and that's something unfortunately I don't have a lot.
Yeah.
But in this movie, they actually had Tom Hardy and Idris Elba considered for the role of Apocalypse, and thank God they didn't take the role.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Oscar Isaac did. And this movie, they were supposed to mention that Mystique is the mother of Nightcrawler, which is in the comics.
Right.
She's actually with Azrael, is her person, the father of Nightcrawler, who's from the original days of. They decided not to do it. It's actually in a gag reel where Jennifer Lawrence mentions it. Jennifer Lawrence was actually asking to get out of the X-Men franchise at this time.
She was blowing up.
Yeah, she's an Oscar winner for Silver Linings Playbook.
Right.
She was in Hunger Games. This movie was 144 minutes and was the longest in the X-Men franchise. It just wasn't, this movie is the worst movie of all the X-Men, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also one of my least favorite comic book movies ever. Like,
yes.
I'd rather watch Batman and Robin because it knows how campy it is.
So I have a question for you. If you had to do comic book movies, Batman and Robin, Green Lantern, and this movie, how would you rank them?
I'm gonna go like. Do you want me to rank them best or
best
worst?
To worst. Best to worst.
So the best out of those three is Batman and Robin.
Is it because of Batman?
And it's not because it's Batman, because it knows how bad it is. It knows how bad it is. Green Lantern and this movie tried to take themselves seriously, like they were legit comic book movies. And Batman and Robin knows that it's bad, that it's 1966, Adam West, like Batman campy. It knows it. Like fucking, he has ice skates built into the bat suit. Like,
it's a Superman the movie.
Well, yeah, like Batman and Robin is my favorite out of those three.
Have you heard the rumors for Flash?
No.
There's rumors. I'm a geek and I go on the film sites that Clooney makes an appearance as Batman.
If I've heard rumors that Bale makes an appearance, but if Clooney makes an appearance, I will lose my. I will take off my shirt in the theater and scream from the top of my lungs if that happens.
I have to be there to watch it.
And I guarantee you, if Kelly is watching right now, if she's one of our 4 live listeners right now, she's like, I will go see any movie with you. I am not going to see The Flash with you, just on the chance that that happens.
That would be hilarious.
That would be hilarious. There
But
are 2 movies. There are 2 movies this summer that are coming out that I'm absolutely bringing in a bucket of KFC and mashed potatoes for. One of them is The Flash. The other one, and I don't care. I told you this when we went to the movies last week, or a week and a half ago. I am fucking going to see Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, and I'm bringing in my own food. And I'm like, those movies are an absolute guilty pleasure.
The best part about this, for people who are listening, watching and listening, is that Swole leans over to me and goes, "That movie looks bad, but low key, I'm gonna go see it." I was like, okay. Nah, hey man, I like bad movies too, but yeah, but this, like, as you can tell, this movie was not great. And like we mentioned in the beginning, we'll touch a little bit on Dark Phoenix, which was directed by Simon Kinberg, who actually wrote some of the scripts of the previous movies. That movie had
Yeah.
a budget of 200 million and it made the lease of 252 million. So it didn't do too well. It was released in 2018. In terms of Dark Phoenix, I actually finished the movie yesterday. I watched it. Haven't watched it since it came out, and I watched it again. And it's really not that bad of a movie. I think Sophie Turner in that movie does really horrible acting, though.
She does. I remember going to see that in the theater, and like the final scene, like I don't remember, because I don't remember if it was in a school or just
Mhm.
an apartment building. I'm like, this movie is fucking cheeks. Like
Yes.
Sophie Turner can't act for shit in this movie.
Yeah, I thought Fassbender again did well, McAvoy did well, but I think it was a horrible way to transition them out of their roles. Hopefully, there's been talks of them rebooting X-Men, and I hope they're part of they continue because they're both young. They can continue the roles, and they kind of were passed the torch from Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, especially after
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart's appearance in Logan. Um, and I wish they would keep them as like the core and move on to something different. But we'll see how it is. Right now, from what I was reading, Disney's more concerned with rebooting the Fantastic Four, which I hope they do properly.
I don't know why. Like, why is that movie, like, out of all the properties that they bought, right? And they still don't own Spider-Man yet, but like, why is the Fantastic Four the focal point? Like, I get it, right? Like, I love the late '90s Fantastic Four movies for the same reason that I love, like, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. They're campy and they're cheesy, but like, why is that their most important property? Why is their focus on that? Unless there's a bigger picture.
I think that in terms of the way it was treated, I think Disney and that now that owns all rights besides Spider-Man is trying to give a proper treatment to movies. And like you said, the 20th Century Fox really didn't do a proper treatment to Fantastic Four. Yeah, they made money, but they were very campy. And I think they kind of put the feelers out with Wanda
Doctor
and Doctor
Strange.
Strange when they
Yeah.
had Reed Richards appear. Because like I don't know, I didn't see the movie with you obviously, but when I saw it, when Reed Richards appeared, people were fucking cheering and clapping,
Well,
which I thought was hilarious.
that's been a fan favorite theory for a long time. Like John Krasinski as Reed Richards, because he was supposed to be, like, they wanted him in the MCU initially
Mhm.
to play Captain America,
Yes.
but it went to Chris Evans, and they wanted him in the MCU for a long time. And when they said Reed Richards, fans wanted it. So that little cameo in Multiverse of Madness was like purely for the fans.
Yes, but like I think they're just so. And then you have the re-release of I always tell my brother this, was just like my favorite Stacey King quote when he's talking about a celebrity. Michael
Hot
B. Jordan.
sauce.
Yeah. Michael B. Jordan happened to be at a Bulls game. And this is when Creed was released. And Michael B. Jordan was sitting there, and Stacey King tells Neil Funk at the time, there's Michael B. Jordan, man. He was in one of the greatest movies he's ever seen in Creed and one of the worst movies I've ever seen in Fantastic Four.
It's
Like,
true. It's
so
true.
the remake was horrible. I think they would do a great job of, putting detail and effort into the story. If they do that, I think it can, progress. To be honest with you, I would if James Gunn would have stood with Marvel, I would like him to actually transition to Fantastic Four. I
Yeah,
think he would have done a job with that.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm wondering, because you're going tonight, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering what the Easter egg is going to be at the end of Guardians, because you know there's going to be one. You know there's going to be one.
Yeah, and I want to. So I've heard mixed reviews on this. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. So I'll give my report next week. Not spoiler, but I'll tell you like how I felt about it, like a real honest
Yeah.
opinion. But so far, guys, those are the X-Men movies. We kind of rambled on about certain things because of the movies that were bad, but that's kind of our view of it. We kind of told you how we got into it. Like I'm no comic book nerd in any sense. I like them, but I just can't. Wasn't my thing when I was a kid. I do try to read some certain ones now, but just not as in depth as some of you. So if you guys have any corrections about any of the storyline points that you thought we got wrong, or I just want to explain to us, hit us up at Yumper and Svo on Twitter. Um, but yeah, it's pretty much what we had for this episode. It's gonna be a short one. But let me get into our ALS walk. So I know the White Sox have not been having the greatest season this year.
Hey, they won 3 out of their last 4. Let's give credit
Yes.
where credit's due.
But they're on a team on the rise, and if you want to see that team on the rise, all you have to do is enter our ALS raffle. So basically, my mom is walking in an ALS walk. She's doing it for one of her friends who has ALS, and ALS is one of the worst diseases that we deal with today. It has no cure. I know a lot of people who've actually tragically passed from it, and it really drains families of money. Perfect example is Mongo McMichael, who's dealing with it right now. He has financial freedom to pay for his services, but just the toll it takes on the body and family is pretty horrible. This walk is to help with research as well as help some of the families financially. All you have to do is just go to the Yumper and Svo um, Twitter. It's pinned comment there. Go follow the directions that are in the post. Basically, donate, whether it be $1, 25 cents, or even sign up for the walk. Take a screenshot and post it to our Twitter page, and you are automatically entered. And you'll get 2 tickets to a White Sox game, 2 Stadium Club passes, parking, and you might meet some of the characters from the 108. If you can't, it's cool, but any little thing that helps, and we're just trying to raise more awareness. This is something that me and Swole do every year for something that we believe in.
Even if you just share it.
Yeah.
Like, even if you just share it, it's pinned on our Twitter page. Like, if you can't donate or whatever, we don't care. We just any share that you could do would be super appreciative.
Yes, yes. And the things, without you guys, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing because this is what we enjoy doing. But it's also good to hit things that are kind of impacting the world that we see today, especially a lot of people that are dealing with this. So if you can, please help out. But with that, Swole, you want to get to coming soon?
Yeah. Yump, what are we doing next? I don't even think we discussed it.
No, but we did not discuss it. There's a reason I said this. But you mentioned M. Night Shyamalan.
I mean, I'm down for an M. Night Shyamalan movie. The other thing, like, why don't we do a viewers choice poll?
Yep.
What do you think about what do you think about a certain franchise that has their 5th installment coming out sometime in June or July? Is it June or July?
Yeah, so that one I kind of it's in June.
Yeah, and we're already in like May.
Yes, we can do that first, and then we can make our announcement for that one too.
Okay, so you want to do that next week?
Yeah, so we'll hold off the poll and we'll do that special one. We'll release that later this week. We don't know which day we'll do it. It'll be Monday or Sunday, but or later in the week depending on how our schedules line up. But we'll have another episode. We're trying to do weekly. We're just trying to fit around our schedules because a lot of things are going on.
Yeah.
But we also have a kind of a celebrity coming on within the next month. Older celebrity, but somebody that is recognizable to play iconic characters in movies that we've watched growing up.
Pretty awesome for our buddy Shankster to hook us up with this connect.
Yes, and shout out to Shankster for doing that. He's the man, one of our biggest supporters. So look forward to that. Look out for that coming out. Be sure to follow us at Yumper and Svo on Twitter. Check out the statisticpenguin.com, statisticpenguinstudios.com for our blogs, podcast, and Tony's been killing it on the hookup on music. Be sure to check out his pod. It's only 30 minutes for if you don't like long pods. They do discuss everything music. I love that fucking pod. I listen to it all the time.
Yeah, Tony's the man. I wonder if Tony's still in here. Do you think Tony will let me come on next week and give a review of like the Blink reunion shows that I'm going to tomorrow and Sunday? Tony, if you're still in here, hit us up in the DMs. Like maybe we could talk about a Blink reunion like review. But
yes. That'd be kind of cool too. He said yes, he will. So there, you got your answer right there. But yeah, be sure to check him out. Roxy and Alexis are going to be dropping blogs, and Roxy's probably going to write something about Cincinnati when she comes back. Alexis, I know, has some ideas she's been talking about, so they'll be writing. So it just won't be, our pods and everything. We'll have more content. The whole point is to get more content out, guys. We also have a big cartel shirt. If you like our shirts and stuff, buy it there. The links on the website. I'm not going to put the ad right now because we're just keeping this one a short one. But check them out. We actually released a Soprano themed shirt with the Quasimodo predicted all this. So check that out. The Statistic Bums shirt is there as well. But yeah, before we get to Swole's final thought, thank you so much for watching, listening, everything you guys do. Without you guys, we wouldn't be anything, and I wouldn't be enjoying doing this. Be sure to hit me up at Little Yumper on Twitter. And with that, let's go to Swole's final thought.
So most of this episode was talking about comic book movies, and I think comic book movies that are very, very important in the grand scheme of things and why we have the MCU. And this final thought is more of like a plea for myself. I really need Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to be good, because the last couple Marvel movies I didn't love as much as I did previous ones. I know Yumper and I fundamentally disagree on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it.
I didn't like it either.
I didn't love Quantumania. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I think they're all just very average. So I very, very much need Guardians of the Galaxy to be good to keep me faithful to the MCU. I thought you were going to say Blink-182 to come on the pod. I wish, Jen. I wish. But I would like to hear your thoughts if you listen to this pod regularly, because I will see it. I might try to go. There's all kinds of shows. I might try to go at 11 o'clock tonight if I can talk my wife into allowing me. But I need it to be good. But send me your thoughts on Guardians, and we'll include your spoiler-free thoughts on our next episode before we get into what we're watching and our topic, which is going to be awesome. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening. I couldn't do this without Yumper. He is the heart and soul of this show. I realized how much he does last week when I had Baloney and my buddy Shu on. So thanks, Yum, for all you do. And thank you all you guys for tuning in. Deuces.